Je voudrais remercier chacun de vous pour votre présence à cet atelier qui est d'une importance capitale. Je me nomme Mamadou Fotiki Koulibaly, je suis le coordinateur du projet Regreening Africa pour Oxfam, je travaille pour Oxfam. Et bienvenue à chacun de vous à cet atelier. Et je ne serai pas long. Je voudrais terminer ce message de bienvenue par une citation d'un grand environnementaliste qui a dit ceci, je cite, « Chaque fois qu'un arbre est abattu ou chaque fois qu'une terre est dégradée suite à l'action ou à l'inaction de l'homme, la nature pleure. Et les pleurs de la nature nous exposent aux effets néfastes du changement climatique. Par conséquent, en tant qu'agent de développement, nous devons prendre les mesures anticipatoires ou correctives pour sauvegarder nos écosystèmes et sauver l'environnement. Je vous invite alors, chers participants, chères participantes, à réfléchir sur cette citation tout au long de cet atelier et durant votre vie de tous les jours. Je vous remercie et bonne session à tout le monde.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mamadou, for those great remarks. And I think my role is just to add to that. So my name is Mika Bono Chieng. I'm the program manager of Regreening Africa based in Nairobi, working at C4 ICRAF. And my role is really just to welcome this wonderful variety and diversity of participants from all over the globe to really look across what we understand, some of the things that we've learned, and how to take this forward in our work towards landscape restoration, particularly within the UN Decade of Landscape Restoration within the continent. So I'm really looking forward to the presentations, to the discussions, and to the suggestions and additions, and to see where we can take the lessons that we have and move them forward. So over to you, Ibrahim. I think it's time to get started and make up the time.
Thank you, Miki, for this brief introduction, and thank you, Mamadou, also. I think we're expecting a short video introducing ILC Africa and Regreening Africa, and then we'll follow my presentation. I will ask Winnie and Marion if the videos are ready so we can show the video, short videos. Thank you.
About everything. You go now, I'm going to get out my team. I'm going to come to Alahaban. Every job, man, I'm going to meet me now. I'm going to not that and go. Man, I'm going to link on my wrong uncle, Nissy, I'm going to
Baada ya huu mpango sasa kuingia, ile mfutano imeisha. Watu sasa hivi wanakaa wakiwa kabisa wanajua kwamba eneo hili ni la kulishia. Eneo la kilimo iko kwingine na eneo la malisho iko kwingine.
Tini ya bagi kitor ngalama katanun gene tatapi kenyor ba ngalama somo logi kana kitanyo karama kenyor logi mpurtongo mo ko bapoy agenyor kinetu to karama ja kenyor kere ke ya tapoy joma ke do panyesu Kiba bi magatanu na jere tage gamma lagaw tage nyoru ngale ire ba kinetut lagaw age kol kokon tugul ketori tage nyoru ba kokon tugul kokon ka wala kyo ibu ripotin tage mwachi nimbo kokon ka wala kanya mbolo ndaka poye bunda ndaka chane bunda mag nyoru ne jaya tage lum ngala ripoti wala mwani nyula seramba bi gi nyoru bi ja amida bi.
Thank you, everybody. Again, welcome to all of you to this wonderful workshop. Wherever you are, good morning, good evening, good night, like some have said. We'll do a brief overview of land degradation dynamics in sub-Saharan ecosystem. We've selected a few key ecosystems where ILC has activities, and we will go through these ecosystems and understand what are the key drivers of land degradation in these selected ecosystems. First of all, what is land degradation? From the word mesh on the right side, you could see that there are many keywords that appear. IPCC has defined land degradation as the negative trend in land condition caused by direct or indirect human-induced processes, including anthropogenic climate change, expressed as a long-term reduction or loss of at least one of the following: biological productivity, ecological integrity, and value to humans. And there are various definitions by the UNCCD, FAO, and one of the most also referred to definition is the one in the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment Report. When you look at the word mesh on the right side with the map of Africa, what I've done, I've taken many of these definitions and put them together. And the keywords that appear, you could see are very much describing what land degradation implies. It implies desertification, is caused mainly by human activities. It's characterized by a lower productivity. It's a human-induced process. It affects food insecurity. It's a loss of livelihood, land fertility, and so on. So these keywords occur throughout the different ecosystems, and then we will see throughout the presentation how land degradation affect each of these specific ecosystems we've selected. On this slide, understanding land degradation is really a process that's being influenced by what we call drivers, specific drivers. We have the proximate drivers, and then we have the underlying drivers. The underlying drivers, starting with the outer ring, are really socioeconomic process linked to demography, population growth, policies, land tenure, global markets, and weak institutions. And also we have key biophysical drivers that have to do with the specific ecosystem. It could be due to the soil type, the soil quality, the climate, topography, and the vegetation cover, and many other aspects that will have a direct influence on what we call the proximate driver, which is the second ring, the green one. And these proximate drivers are the ones directly influencing land degradation. These are anthropogenic drivers. It could be short following time, deforestation, overgrazing, agricultural expansion, erosion, and so many other factors that are coming from direct human interaction with the land and the environment, which directly cause land degradation. So summarizing land degradation, we have to take into account some of these key factors, which are the proximate driver and the underlying drivers. When we look at the key ecosystems we've selected about 4 ecosystems in sub-Saharan Africa: the mountains ecosystem, the wetlands, rainforest, and the drylands. It is true that land degradation is mainly understood to be critical in the drylands, but land degradation do exist in all these ecosystems. It's not only a dryland thing. The mountains ecosystem is characterized by areas with elevation above 300 meters. It's mostly in Eastern Africa, and then it covers about 1.5 million square kilometers. And we have 10 specific different ecosystems in there. It's a source of water and energy, forest products, minerals, agricultural products, and recreational activities. And then in terms of land degradation, deforestation, forest degradation, and loss of biodiversity, loss of soil, and landslides are the key manifestations of land degradation. And the factors that affect this land degradation, it comes through the biophysical aspect we've mentioned, socioeconomical, land use, and governance. In terms of biophysical, we have climate change that comes up, and climate variability, dust storms, and then we have geological factors linking to earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and then population density and population growth are the key socioeconomic factors. And then we have the land use also, especially in areas like Ethiopia, where mountain agriculture is very much developed. And then mining is also going on. And then we have the urbanization in some of these areas. And then we come down to governance. Governance is something that will, it comes across the key ecosystems we will go through. We will see that it affects how some of these policies are implemented in terms of protecting the environment. Next, we come to the wetlands, which is a transitional zone between the aquatic and terrestrial habitats. It covers about 1% of Africa. It's a biodiversity hotspot. We've got fisheries going on, wildlife habitat, water supply is a source of fuel wood, wet grounds for agriculture, very fertile lands, and pastures. Wetlands are, in terms of percentage, the lake, reservoir, river, freshwater, swamps, and pan, brackish, and saline wetlands, and intermittent wetland. This is how it's divided across Africa. And then in terms of land degradation, this is characterized by the reduction of forest cover, the decreasing of carbon capture and storage, loss of biodiversity again, and declining water quality and water quantity in these wetlands that are supposed to be large water reservoirs. In terms of the biophysical factors is again climate change and climate variability, and the biological aspect, we have invasive alien species that are really spreading in these wetlands, and then insect invasion also. Poverty is a key socio-economical factor. Again, in terms of demography, we have population density, population growth, migration, social education. These are aspects that are lacking and that are driving also the land degradation in this ecosystem. In terms of land use, urbanization, urban development, and agricultural practices are really affecting these wetlands again. And then we have the overgrazing, water use, fishing, dam buildings, which is linked with the urbanization again, and water pollution. This is very much affecting this wetland in this area. Governance, there's uncontrolled wood cutting. This is again due to weak policies that are not properly implemented. And then some of these development activities that are ongoing are not very well governed within the political aspect. So this again is affecting the land degradation in the wetlands. When we come to the rainforest, the first area that comes to mind is the Congo Basin, which is the second largest tropical rainforest with 2.8 million square kilometer forested. It's a high carbon storage, more than the Amazon. It's got 6,000 to 10,000 species of tropical plants, 400 species of mammals, 1,000 species of birds, food and shelter for more than 75 million. It's a source of minerals, diamond, gold, and coltan also. And we also know that this is driving a lot of conflicts in instability, unfortunately, in those same areas. In terms of land degradation, again, deforestation is a key manifestation with loss of biodiversity, wetlands. I mean, rainforest being such a biodiversity hotspot, we have a reduction in terms of carbon capture and storage also. The key socio-economical aspects is charcoal production, fuel production, commercial hunting, industrial logging, bushmeat trade, small-scale timber exploitation, population growing, increased density in some other areas. The agricultural practices are not durable. They're not really is subsistence agriculture with slash and burn practices. And also urbanization and infrastructure development is affecting some of this area, not to mention mining, which is very much creating these conflicts and the deforestation that comes along. The political aspects is very much present in the rainforest also. There are no strong policies. The wood cutting is not very much properly managed. It's not controlled by the government. When it comes to the dryland ecosystem, we have more than 50% of Sub-Saharan Africa, which is qualified as being a dryland. Is home to nearly 50% of the population of Africa. Natural resources are there, renewable energy, a lot of sunshine, and many challenges, especially when you look at the Sahel area. This, let me see if I can put this. When you look at the Sahel area, this brown area that covers from East to West Africa is home to many conflicts, home to many instability, and this drives, again, land degradation through deforestation, soil degradation, loss of biodiversity. Water resources are also very much difficult to maintain there. Again, drought is very much present in the dryland. Heavy precipitation, I will say, sandstorms also, wind speed driving erosion, water logging, water erosion, wind erosion, and runoff. These are the key biophysical aspects that are really driving land degradation in the dryland ecosystems. In terms of aspects, again, fuel wood and charcoal production, poverty is making it very hard for these communities living not depend on the natural, some kind of overrun of these natural resources. And this is also driven again by migration. We have migration from the drier areas where populations are moving south to more, how do you say, more fertile lands, and this degradation is following the same path. In terms of agricultural practices, we have cropland expansion, like I was saying, people migrating from northern area to southern area where there is more fertile land. So this is driving cropland expansion. Inappropriate land use and farming practices also. And then we have mining, overgrazing activities going on there also. The key governance and political issues in the drylands is land tenure. And we have weak institutions. Some of these institutions have policies based from the colonial times, so very outdated policies that are not up to date to be able to manage the current challenges that are being faced by these communities. So political instability also throughout the Sahel area, where we have conflicts and armed conflicts actually going on. So these are the key political aspects that are driving land degradation in the drylands. We've looked at the specific characteristics across these ecosystems, and biodiversity loss comes first, followed by deforestation, forest degradation, reduced carbon storage, soil loss, and declining water quality. When we look at these 4 ecosystems we've selected. And then also in terms of factors in these specific ecosystems, climate change, population growth, urbanization, and unsustainable agricultural practices are key factors. across this ecosystem. And then we have migration, mining, wood cutting, and weak institutions that come as a second level of factors influencing land degradation. And then the last set of factors are overgrazing, agricultural practices, and charcoal and fuel wood again. So pretty much this is what's driving land degradation in this selected ecosystem. And then we see that this ecosystem provide key services and goods for the livelihood of the communities. And these ecosystems are undergoing land degradation, and these are threatened, and this will have very much damaging impacts on also the livelihood of the communities, socioeconomic aspects of these communities, and then the policies need to be updated to be able to face some of these challenges, and also to be able to restore some of these degraded area. And then land degradation throughout sub-Saharan Africa, it really threatens the livelihood of millions of people, and with restoration initiative are urgently needed to be able to restore some of these lands, because we see how the communities are depending on the natural resources in this area. Thank you very much. This was a brief overview of the land degradation dynamics in this key ecosystem. Thank you very much.
No, the first one. Okay. Morning, everybody. I'm Kapoli Sanogo, scientist C4 aircraft base in Bamako. So I would like to present this topic: climate variability and change, impact to ecosystems, restoration and conservation. So the outline of the presentation is as follows. Please, can you move on then? Yeah, I will just introduce this presentation, and after I'll talk about climate variability and change impact on ecosystem. And also I will talk about ecosystem restoration and conservation. And I will give a few lines for conclusion. About the introduction, I can say that climate is impacting ecosystem service through variability. And this drives territorial biodiversity loss and affect ecosystem services. For example, the degraded land cover more than 2 billion hectares and threaten the welfare of 2.3 billion people in the world due to climate change. This to show you the impact of climate. And for example, in ecosystem restoration, if we, from this impact, if we try to do some solution for that, this will help to reverse degradation, stimulate economic growth, and contribute to the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. And then for this kind of restoration, we should target the local species which are already adapted to our environment, and we'll have two objectives for that, for climate, both for climate and for target species for land restoration should reflect stable climate condition both now and for the future. The climate change are limited the delivery of ecosystem service, which are mainly like climate hazard, rainfall, and temperature. For example, the evidence is that whenever the temperature is increased, the rainfall is decreasing, and this disturb the functional ecosystem services. And I will show you in the next slide the relationship. For example, this relationship with tree growth, one of the key tree species in the Sahel that we call Vitellara paradoxa. I have collected this sample and bring it to the lab to check the relationship with the tree growth and climate change. And this sample was collected in 2 different areas in Mali. And so that on the first figures, you can see the correlation between the precipitation and the tree growth is 0.62. Then this is a correlation between tree growth and precipitation. to check if the climate change impact really on the vegetation. Then this is a kind of evidence to show you the impact of climate change on ecosystem services. This is for the example of Vitellaria paradoxa, as I said, is one of the Q3 species in agroforestry system in the Sahel. We'll move for the second. And also I collect also a sample for this species that we call Daniela oliveri. And also I bring in the lab of dendrochronology to check the evidence of relationship between climate change and tree growth, because many people are talking about climate change, but if you ask people to show the evidence, sometimes people don't have, they know really the climate change exists, but how we can show scientifically the evidence? So this is a kind of evidence from the scientists. We proceed in the lab to check the relationship between the tree growth and the climate. And the blue one is the blue is the precipitation, and the black is the tree growth. And you notice that the relationship, the correlation is 0.5. If it's significant, it's really significant. It means that the climate change really impact on the tree growth, and this is the kind of evidence. Move to. This is also another example for the three species we call Landia microcarpa. I check also the relationship of these three species and climate change. And also I found a good relationship, that is a significant relationship with the tree growth and the precipitation. But for all these three species, when we check the case of temperature, the temperature does not show any relationship between tree growth and there is no relationship between tree growth and temperature, but we have only a significant relationship between the tree growth and temperature for Vitellaria, for Daniela, for Landia microcarpa. It means that in our case, this is the case in the Sahel, especially in Mali. It means that the main factor which impact on the tree growth on the ecosystem should be the rainfall. Let's move on to the next. For the ecosystem restoration and conservation, we can say that the potential to protect, restore, and use ecosystem has tools to tackle climate change under the framework and nature-based solution. It means that if you want to look at the solution on climate change, you should focus on the nature-based solution. And ecosystem restoration will enhance the adaptive capacity of both ecosystem and society. Land restoration have figures on the agenda of several global initiatives, which include the Green Africa Initiative, Green Hole, and so on. And for that, we need to use several technologies to deal with, to restore these ecosystems that are degraded or disappear. Please move. And one of the technology used is the hairband. This is a kind of, you saw the farmer use the hairband in one place of Mali, in the center of Mali. And this is the list of the species. After construct these bees, we can sow with this, we can plant these species for a restoration. All these species are better for a restoration. Those are leguminous, those are fodder tree that we use for livestock, and so on. Then this is an example of technology that can be used for land restoration. And also we have also FNR. This is an example of that we did on the field. And this also in Mali, FNR is a low cost of land restoration technique, which combat hunger, because when you restore the ecosystem, it will make available ecosystem service we can use to deal with the issue of climate change. And also we have another technology that we call half moon. All these technology contribute to contribute the restoration of land degradation. There are many technologies. I just select a few technologies that to show you how to work on our case in the Sahel here. Please move on. So in conclusion, we can say that really the climate is impacting ecosystem services, which significantly contribute to land degradation and loss of biodiversity. For that, the restoration or degraded vegetation can effectively improve ecosystem services, increase human well-being, and promote the regional and sustainable development. So restoration program for that, the restoration program need to increase and address both the restitution of biodiversity and ecosystem service. It will focus on both restitution and ecosystem services. This is the few lines that I was prepared to present to you. Especially, I make this presentation to show the aspect of dendrochronology, how we can focus on these to show the relationship of between tree growth and climate, to show the evidence that the climate change impact on the tree growth in the Sahel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kapuri. And I think the next presentation should be from Joy, I think. Joy, are you there?
Joy, this is Joy. Good afternoon from Uganda, and thank you very much for sharing the screen. My presentation is going to be very brief. I am presenting it on behalf of myself and then our Uganda Land Care Network Extension expert, Matthias. And the topic is community-based and led land care, approaches and experiences in restoration, conservation, ecosystems in Uganda. Next, please. Next slide. This is the outline, very brief. Look at what are the conservation needs at national level. And then I'm going to make a small brief presentation on implementation model, which really explains the approach we are taking. And then I'll share experiences and some success stories. Next, please. Next slide. So this is Uganda. Uganda is land linked, not landlocked. And you can see we have very many neighbors. And we have a glaring need to restore and conserve a lot on our ecosystems. And this slide is all about what we are doing to cultivate stewardship and catalyzing collective action with about 1,348 land care groups. And these land care groups, on average, each one of them is about 20, 30 members. They are all scattered across the country, northeast, west, central, and east. And we are working in 10 critical ecosystems. I'll not go into details, but each one of those landscapes has very glaring land degradation challenges. In brief, we are battling with the high population growth on natural resources which are not elastic, and therefore we have deforestation, which is very scaring. The little land cover which is available, we now have at least 2% annual loss of our forests. In 1890, Uganda had about 45% of its land under forest. But now, many of the forests have been cut to zero, but on average, only 14% is existing. Agriculture is also a very key economic activity, And unfortunately, most of the forests are found on private land. And therefore, that's why we look at restoration, but also conservation. And I needed also to bring everybody to appreciate that Uganda has made a commitment to restore at least 2.5 million hectares. And we are working very hard, Uganda Land Care, working with communities. Ours is grassroots, ours is mobilizing grassroots to participate in this noble cause. Next, please, next. So our focus as Uganda Land Care Network, we are looking at nurturing these land care groups. They need nurturing. We are looking at increasing the networking processes through mentoring. We also prioritize capacity building through training and social learning, team building, monitoring, and evaluation. We emphasize facilitating knowledge sharing, which is very, very important. We will not have conservation and restoration unless we have knowledge shared across every stakeholder who has a contribution to putting our ecosystems back to normal. And then we also are busy harnessing and increasing partnerships and networks among civil societies, but also with government. So that is the focus we take as Uganda Land Care Network. Next, this is our Uganda Land Care Network implementation model. Those who have seen me presenting, I never can lose out on this implementation model. Our implementation model is really a devolution process. We are looking at empowering grassroots, strong farmer organizations, and our focus, our scale of operation is on communities and then sub-counties and districts, but also our outcomes, we are looking at increasing productivity, increasing institutional innovations, and scaling out sustainable land management practices that are already evident. Some of them are indigenous, some of them are alien, but we are looking at how do we scale them, and we are looking at empowering grassroots institutions. So that is our implementation model. And we are looking at catalyzing collective action. How do you catalyze collective action and ownership so that what is being done in terms of restoration is owned, is not just a project which has got a lifeline, a lifetime of a lifeline. We are looking at everything owned and driven by communities. Next, please. I will then share very quickly what our experiences, and the first one is building networks. We prioritize building networks because they are very important. Again, it is linked to ensuring that knowledge sharing is maximized. We have links with global and continental initiatives. We have strong allies with government institutions. We have strong connections with the district platforms, and then schools, because we believe that the young generation must be at the forefront of these innovations of restoration and conservation. Next, please. We emphasize and prioritize training, and training is all about empowering our grassroots. And it is hands-on. I come from actually a classroom. I used to be part of the university. Then I joined research. I was part of ICRAF for many years. But now I see training must be at the grassroots, and that's what we are prioritizing, because we reach many people and it's hands-on. It's no longer theory. What we teach is practical. So this is part of what we do. We are involved in facilitating communities to prepare action plans. We are facilitating sharing knowledge on how to increase agroforestry on land. We are facilitating learning how to build fuel-saving stoves. We are learning how to manage landscapes which are sloping, and all that training is at grassroots, empowering grassroots communities. Next. I had already mentioned that we have a very passionate interest in working with the young generation. So we have a program called the Junior Land Care Program. I want to appreciate the partners that we've been working with from in Australia, supporting this program on junior land care initiatives. Now in schools, we are looking at how we build capacity of these young people to be able to make nurseries, to be able to prepare school gardens, to be able to increase multi-purpose trees in compounds, to be able to appreciate conservation by institutionalizing the principles through music, dance, and drama, and also training junior land care facilitators who are teachers. This is a very innovative and it is increasing at a fast rate, and everybody is appreciating. A lot of what we are seeing is, of course, land cover increased, but also we are very surprised that now institutions can feed themselves on a variety of foods, which really adds a lot of value. We still have school dropouts in Africa, and I don't think I'm only speaking about Uganda. So we are looking at, even when a child drops out of school, this child can make a life working on some of these innovations, like setting up a tree nursery, like being able to facilitate these innovations. Next, please. We work very much with our communities, and we have already explained, we are looking at catalyzing collective action. We still believe, yes, you can do much at an individual, but when we are looking at scaling, we need many people and a larger geographical area. So we are looking at how do we get communities together to work together, to appreciate working together and the impact of working together. And there we've been supporting community mobilization, which is very key, working with the local government institutions, and also formulating bylaws to be able to guide the conservation and restoration initiatives, increasing social learning, organizing exchange visits, and being able to see what is being done better, so that when you go back, you can also practice that, and of course, increasing network. Next, and I think that will be the last. Uganda Land Care Network has got some of these success stories. The lady is standing by a poster on demonstration that we have facilitated across the country. These demonstrations are very important because communities need to see and touch, and also talk to people who are hosting these demonstrations. We have these demonstrations all across the country, and we are very happy that the impact of these demonstrations is quite big. We have been able to, in partnership with WOCAT, which is a global network involved in documenting land management practices and approaches. We have been very privileged to be part of a success story of documenting sustainable land management, producing a catalog specifically looking at how do we equip extension service to be able to support initiatives at grassroots. So we also have are very proud to have designed an in-service curriculum on sustainable land management, and we are looking at how do we roll out this curriculum so that we have many extension agents trained, and therefore this extension also training grassroots. I needed to show you a picture of one of our champions involved in conservation. This is in northern Uganda, where land cover has been compromised, but we have got champions who are involved in conservation, ensuring that what is remaining is actually conserved. This is a young man who has an apiary, and we work with him. He trains communities not anywhere else, but inside the forest. To us, we see that as a very big achievement where our communities can learn as they see initiatives on ground. I would like to say thank you so much. We really appreciate working with many people. ICRAF is my special institution and CIFO. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Joy, for this wonderful presentation and sharing your experience in Uganda. Now we're calling the panel members, specifically Pierre Dambele.
Sorry, Ibrahim, I thought I had to present on policy before we go to the panel discussion.
Okay, so I'll hand you the floor then, Marwa, then the panel will come after you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. I think my talk is going to touch upon many aspects that Joy presented right now. The elements that she mentioned are going to be put into some broader scale, and we'll go through some the state of art of agroforestry, i.e. tree on farm management in sub-Saharan Africa. And we'll go second.
Share your screen.
Okay, I thought, okay. Is it okay?
Perfect. Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so I will go first through the context and of agroforestry in sub-Saharan Africa. And second, we'll see some policy barriers, and then we'll finish a presentation with some solution pathways. This talk is mainly based on two references, and Yatish and also Bernard et al. 2019 that tried to do some work on the policy gaps regarding agroforestry in the Regreening Africa project. To start, I would like to start with a question that is not actually a question, but it's a remark. Going through the existing material, it seems that agroforestry is seeking its identity. Identity in terms of where it should be put, where agroforestry should be located in terms of institutional framework. But first, we see that agroforestry of the tree on farms contribute to the livelihoods, and we have seen it in Joyce's presentation. It contributes to sustainable food system, to socioeconomic development and income generation. Yet, there are many barriers that are preventing agroforestry to be fully considered or fully integrated into existing policy frameworks in sub-Saharan Africa. Then some policy barriers. First, this institutional loneliness I was referring to. Because of the fact that agroforestry extends to various sectors that are related to agriculture, to forestry, to the environment in general, to land and to water management, it becomes difficult to deal with the issues that are typical or that are particular to the management of trees on farm. Then agroforestry is caught between these sectoral ministries and policies. Therefore, it's not fully integrated into the existing policies, the plannings, the budgeting, and the financing of all these ministries across which agroforestry is located. The second key hindrance that I mentioned here is the question of who owns the trees on farm. This goes back to the land tenure issues, the tree tenure issues. We see that there are insecure tree tenure schemes. Also, these tree tenures dispositions are unclear on access, on use, and also on management of the trees on farms. There are also mismatches between the state legal entitlement to the trees and to land in general, and also the farmers' legitimate claims to the trees that they have been cultivating on their farm. This creates a long-term uncertainty for them, and it also limits the incentives for farmers to grow the trees, and also the successes of the restoration efforts. So why would someone invest their time, their labor, their money into growing trees, and then having difficulties to go through very long processes of getting a permit before being able to benefit from the fruit of their labor? So that's a key question that needs really to be taken into account. Then some solutions, pathways. First, regarding the policies and strategies, they need to be holistic development and implementation of national agroforestry policies, strategies, and action plans. For now, we know that Ghana, for example, has an agroforestry plan, but that dates back to 1986. So it's certainly outdated. We know that countries like Senegal, Niger, and Mali have some mentions of agroforestry in their sectoral policies, but there is no specific agroforestry policy that will be dedicated to addressing only the issues of agroforestry, land restoration, and other related fields. Ethiopia and Kenya are engaged in some in some processes of agroforestry strategy elaboration, while Rwanda has an agroforestry strategy and action plan that is being completed now. So we know that government, in terms of solutions, there should be this development and implementation of national strategies. These strategies can be integrated into subnational and local development plans. These are very important, as we saw with Joy that things that are happening in the field are really those that can make a difference. So the integration of those policy elements and strategies into local development plans and planning and financing processes are very important. In terms of regreening Africa, we try to do trainings, sensitization. We do some advocacy campaigns with our partners for the integration of agroforestry and land restoration targets into development and into local development plans and plannings. The second key point in terms of solution pathways is regarding the coordination and the implementation platforms and mechanisms of agroforestry. So there is a need that we have across our sectoral ministries with collaboration with other agencies, a strong and robust coordination mechanism. For example, within the Regreening Africa project, we try to have a platform that relates all the intervening actors, agencies, and partners into the land restoration processes. For example, we have a national orientation and coordination committee in each country that try to spearhead actions of restoration in the country. We also have, that is in plan for this year, to hold a cross-country policy learning dialogue and field trip to Niger for the Mali and Senegal teams, because there is a need to learn from the Niger presidential decree on the RNA in the country. Regarding that, the presidential decree I was mentioning, this helps actually to give more rights and more opportunities for farmers to benefit from the efforts of their labor, to benefit from the trees and the ecosystems that they have been contributing to restore. So in terms of reforms, there is a need for land and tenure reform to be done. And this reform should be clear in the distribution of rights and benefits over the restored ecosystems for both men, women, and youth, including farmers, pastoralists, and also those that are most vulnerable among them. The extension and advisory services are also key. And so there is a need to address those gaps through robust monitoring, evaluation, and learning processes. And also the need to strengthen our local extension and advisory services, as well as local governments, since these services will remain in the communities after the end of the projects. So in Regreening Africa, we have, for example, the joint reflexive and learning missions that try to gather stakeholders from the donors, from the governments, from the projects, from research and development, to go to the field and then to learn from the ongoing activities in order to better plan for the future activities and the future tasks to come. And we also have the stakeholder approach to risk-informed and evidence-based decision-making, shared in short, component that tries really to facilitate innovation, learning, cross-learning within the Greening Africa project. Another solution pathway is about the incentives and value chains. So there is a need to increase technical financial investments into the development of agroforestry value chains. And in the Greening Africa, we have a very strong emphasis on that. We facilitate access, for example, to credit through our implementing partners, with direct investment into trainings, marketing, organizational capacity buildings, and so on and so forth, including also for women organizations. The last solution pathway that is listed here is regarding harnessing national and international efforts toward reaching the commitments. We are in the context of a destiny of land restoration, the UN decade of land restoration. So we also have many initiatives that try to promote land restoration in order to improve livelihoods and adaptation to climate change and mitigation and climate change mitigation. So there is a need that we have a common movement, buildings, alliances to build upon what we have already, the knowledge that we know, the knowledge that we have on agroforestry, and the policy hindrances to be able to scale up agroforestry much more effectively in the continent. So in Regreening Africa, we really aim to contribute to reaching the country's restoration targets. We are documenting the restoration that is taking place using the Greening Africa app, and the data are stored in the dashboard. So we really aim to transfer those data as evidences of restoration taking place. And each project country can then count those restoration achievements into their commitments. So the take-home message would be that agroforestry is very important and critical for livelihoods, for socio-economic development, and including for those that are considered the most vulnerable in society. So it deserves its own institutional frameworks and policies and plan to be able to play this critical role. And we all have our role to play. This is much more critical and urgent within our current context, where we are seeking to implement nature-based solutions to climate change adaptation and mitigations. This is the key references, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mawa, for this presentation. We appreciate it. We'll now give the floor to Mickey Bourne for her presentation on the Regreening Africa project. Thank you. Mickey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Is that appearing okay?
It's appearing fine. Perfect.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mawa. Thank you so much, Ibrahim and others, for your presentations. I think it lays a wonderful foundation. Today, I really want to give a summary of this program called Regreening Africa, some of what we've been able to achieve, something about what we've learned, and hope that it has value for some of the other restoration work in the region. So for those that didn't see me at the beginning, my name is Mika Bono-Chieng. I'm the Regreening Africa Program Manager, and I'd like to share this presentation on behalf of the whole team. There's many, many people contributing to this work. So I'm going to quickly go through Regreening Africa. I think we've mentioned it a lot. I'd like to just give a bit more context, some of what we've achieved and some of the lessons. Regreening Africa is a very ambitious landscape restoration program. It was started in 2017 and will run pretty much in terms of implementation to the end of this year. It aims to reverse land degradation across 1 million hectares of land in sub-Saharan Africa. And you can see the 8 countries on the map that we're working within. and to benefit around 500,000 households. The program largely focuses on integrating trees into crop, communal and pastoral lands, and combining that with other practices, soil and water conservation, and other land restoration practices that are compatible, but with a strong emphasis on the tree component. It's a very unique program. It's unique in that it's a collaboration between research, development, NGO, and government. While the program is led from C4ICRAF, the implementation takes place in each of the countries through a range of NGO partners, and you can see their logos on the map over here, and many of them are on the call and some of them will be in the panel shortly. We also link through to the government through these national oversight and coordination committees, which Mawa just mentioned, and have a reflective learning across all of these different partners. By the end of our 4th year, which was September last year, we'd already achieved quite a lot in terms of our targets. We'd reached out to over 400,000 households, and we can verify about just under 130,000 of those in terms of taking up new practices. And we will have more understanding of the impact of this adoption at the end of this year as we do the impact evaluation. Of our 1 million hectare target, we've managed to reach out to over 600,000 hectares, and we can verify about 300,000 of those so far using uptake surveys and apps. And with our impact evaluation and our inline surveys this year, we'll be able to verify the remaining amount. So we're really on track to be able to scale to a large area, and it's something that is quite complicated, and I'd like to go through some of the things that we've learned through the process. One of our key lessons, and I've heard a lot about different practices and in the chat, but practices have to be adapted to local contexts, to the landscape, to the biophysical, to the social, to the economic. There is no one practice or one approach that will work in every place. So we have to keep that in mind. It is not just tree planting that will reverse land degradation. It's a combination of practices that are well matched. And so just to give some examples that are being used within Regreening Africa, and there are many more. In Ethiopia, exclosures have been very successful. Social fencing and understanding of keeping certain areas protected to allow regeneration, and then an understanding on how that regenerated resource will be used and who it will benefit. Within Rwanda, smaller land sizes, greater intensity of farming, there's been a preference for trees that are linked to value chains, such as tree tomato, that are fast growing and that are able to produce income. And in places like that, we need to put much more effort into how do we bring back the indigenous trees, what niches in the landscape they may work in. In Senegal, I did hear FMNR earlier. So farmer managed natural regeneration. I hope you're all very familiar with it. It uses the resources that are already in the soil, the seeds, the rootstock, to be able to selectively regenerate trees. This is done through pruning and management. And in that way, the required density and the preferred species are able to be restored. And these are primarily indigenous or local species that come back, and they have a wide range of ecosystem service offers that some of the exotic species do not. So they're very important, and they offer additional complementary elements to the landscape. So we have FMNR and then ANR within some of the communal lands where it's assisted natural regeneration rather than farmer managed. In Senegal, where it's dry, these types of practices are very beneficial, and we've often found in very dry areas, tree planting campaigns have not been successful. And so FMNR and other practices can bring back indigenous species and work in these drier areas. I've already seen some pictures and discussion in the chat on soil and water conservation. There are many approaches, but they are a critical complement to cropping and to integration of trees within many of these landscapes. And so this also needs to be considered. As I've mentioned, we can't be talking just about tree planting anymore. We need to be talking about tree growing in the different ways that happens, and also look at how to value add. Can we graft in situ? Can we graft in nurseries and plant improved species where we need to bring in additional species to what can be regenerated? Nurseries, I think often we overlook the importance of the germplasm or the tree seedlings that we're putting into the system. If we're not investing in really quality supply of tree seedlings, it also reduces the output, if that's fruit trees, or timber trees or other type of tree species. And we know that there's a lot of demand for exotic species, and we understand that there's a value in that in terms of the economics, but we also must ensure that there's some indigenous and local tree species within our nurseries and really push those areas that are maybe not having initial uptake. So that's something briefly around the practices, and I'm sure that many of you can add more. Our other key learning through Regreening Africa has been on measurement. Now, measurement is really important. It's important for many, many reasons. First of all, we need to be able to show what we've done for the investment that we receive. We need to have transparency. We need to show impact. We need to move beyond just activities to what change we're making. We also can use this monitoring information to inform our programs, to adapt, to learn, to improve. And we can also use them as evidence for future investment, for policy changes, and for other interventions. And so we can use this information that we collect, this data, this evidence, to inform future programming and future initiatives. So within Regreening Africa, we actually have collected a lot of information, and some on different levels. So we've used typical household surveys to measure throughout the program to see where uptake is happening, who's benefiting, and to adapt the program. We've also had baselines and endlines. And I just wanted to show, this is quite a complicated graph, but really the key element that I want to share is that we can't just look at the practice. We need to look at the extent. So what kind of area is being included? What intensity of practice? What diversity of practice? And also intra-household equity. The element of equity, gender inclusion is very, very important. And if we don't track it, we often lose sight of it. But you can see that by looking across all these dimensions, this is from Somaliland, this was our baseline survey and our closeout survey, we were able to see a really significant increase across these different dimensions in quite a short amount of time. In Somaliland, it was like 3 years of implementation. And so we can also see that there are improvements. And I think that is positive and reassuring in a time where we often hear of failures rather than of successes. We also want to understand the biophysical elements in terms of the land health. So this is developed by Leewinawiki and Torvagen, the Land Degradation Surveillance Framework, and work that's led out of the spatial and the soils units within C4ECRAF. Now, this is important because it combines data collection on the ground. So you can see all these blue points on this map. They're all places where the teams have gone, collected information in a clustered sampling design so that they can use it to estimate and to model using spatial imagery and to be able to look at land health over a larger area. So we're combining information that's collected on the ground over a huge number of indicators with satellite imagery, and that can give us indication of how land health is changing, soil organic carbon, soil erosion, pH, so that we can really see as we try and restore land, what the reaction is in terms of land health of that land and adjust. And also we can use this information for targeting. Citizen science is very, very important as well. And putting data collection and information into the hands of our communities is going to, I believe, become increasingly important. Within the project, we've developed the Regreening Africa app. And this collects, it's in French and English. You can download it from the Google Play Store, and I really encourage you to have a look. It's open to be used by other projects. And at the moment, it has modules to look at tree planting, FMNR, nurseries, and training. And in this way, we're able to collect information at the local level around what sort of species are there, what people are using them for. And a really key part of the innovation is that we get a georeference, like a polygon, so the corners of the field or the communal area, and so that we can go back and look over time as the restoration process continues, what kind of response we're seeing in terms of the land health and other indicators. And I think as we progress, we'll also be ensuring that these types of apps provide information back to the community on what might be suitable for their place. So a lot of data, which has a lot of a very important role. But one of the really incredible things is that we collect a lot of data and we often don't use it. So we need to be making sure that data is accessible and that it can be used as a platform for decision making. Now, MAWA just introduced the shared framework. And so we use this structured stakeholder engagement approach with evidence. But primarily what that means is we create decisive moments that we bring the data that we're collecting back into the discussions with policymakers, the discussions with our teams, the discussions that we have even as scientists to see how things are progressing. One of our key innovations in the program has been the joint reflective learning missions. Every year, each country plus the national oversight, so our government representatives plus our donor, plus the scientists come together and reflect on the type of information that I've just shown you, the maps, the uptake surveys, but also on what the community is saying. So feedback from the community on progress, feedback from our NGO partners on what is working and where the challenges are. And we use this as a moment to reflect, to learn, and to adapt, so that the next year we're trying to learn from what we've seen and from the data that we've collected. We also use this for our policy engagement and for our workshops and for sharing back to the community. We're also developing some decision dashboards, and this is done out of the Spatial Lab in ICRAF. Tor Wagen is leading the development of a Regreening Africa decision dashboard, and you'll be able to get the link. I can share the link after the presentation. It's under development, but the idea is to start making some of this information more accessible so that we can have data-driven decision-making. We can have summaries, we can have more detail, and even more detail for the technical people that want to get in to see the relationship between different indicators at a local level. So the fourth lesson for us is really a lot around what Mawa just presented. It's about enabling adoption. So livelihoods and policy about creating an enabling environment, to create a pool, to create an incentive for taking up these practices. As Mao mentioned, we are working on value chains in each of the countries. You can see the range of value chains from shea to beekeeping, seedlings, fodder, medicinals. But there is a lot more that I believe can be done in this area. And I hope that all of the partners online are working in this area and seeing how we can support the community to create value chains out of this work. We're also working at the policy levels, and I think Mawa gave a good description, so I'll be quite brief, but we're looking at how to promote, enhance, and continue processes that will create an enabling policy environment for the community. So this could be things like the presidential decree in Niger that gave greater use rights to the community when they regenerate trees on their farms. It may be around creating a coordination mechanism, as in Kenya, where we've supported the agroforestry, the landscape restoration conference that took place last year, as well as some of the strategy processes that are underway. And I think this has come up a few times throughout today already, but governance is also very critical, looking at grazing management, and this is often more at the local level, but keeping in mind some of the drivers of degradation, some of the challenges, and making sure that we're not blind to those in our intervention. Land use rights, particularly around trees, and particularly in the West African countries, in the case of Regreening Africa, there's a lot more that can be done, building on past successes in Niger and hopefully learning from different policy changes and how they can be amplified. So my last message is about partnership, and I heard Joy also mention this. I think it is all about partnerships. It's around bringing the best from all of the different partners, recognizing that we're all supporting the same communities to achieve landscape restoration and to benefit from that process. So working together is critical. These are photos from our virtual discussions as a team. Obviously, with the pandemic, it's been harder to meet in person, but we can still meet online like here, share ideas, build from each other, question what we're doing, and improve as a result. Youth, Joy also mentioned this in the case of Junior Land Care, which is an incredible program. But bringing youth greater into the conversation is really important. These are photos from Kenya. This is a program called Trees for Goals. It was started by this young man in the middle here. And he decided that he wanted to link his sport ambitions with his love of the environment. And so we can come in and support the youth in areas where they've already identified that they want to take it forward. So I think there's a lot of potential to build on what the youth are coming up with in terms of innovative ideas. So my last slide, this is a summary of the key lessons that have come out of Regreening Africa that I hope are of value. We must match our practices to the local context. There is no one practice or approach that will work in every situation. We need to collect data. We need to know what is taking place. We can do that in many different ways. We should be basing our decisions and adapting as we go on this data, but also on a dialogue with different stakeholders from different levels. We must be creating an enabling environment for adoption. And this is by trying to address the drivers of degradation, but also creating an enabling environment to take up some of these practices to make sure that they are of benefit. And partnerships are key, and we must be finding better ways to work together. So thank you so much. This is some information on Regreening Africa. We have a website. You can email us through this email address. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Marion is online and she's managing all the communications. So any other questions? I look forward to the discussion and to hearing the other panels.
Thank you, Mika, for this wonderful presentation. I would like to now invite the panel members, Pierre Dambele from Mali, Hamed Sahel Eco, the Sahel Eco organization, Hamed Constantin Chibozo from the World Vision Niger, Roger Mpande from Zero organization in Zimbabwe. Would you please come online?
Merci, Ibrahim. Can I go ahead?
Oui, Pierre.
Okay, merci, Ibrahim. Merci aux différentes présentations qui ont eu lieu avant notre intervention. Je voudrais remercier Mawa Mike pour leur présentation qui va prendre presque en charge les grandes idées que je voudrais partager ici avec l'audience. Donc, je m'appelle Pierre Dambele et je suis le secrétaire exécutif de l'ONG Sahel Eco. Nous travaillons au Mali sur les questions de reverdissement et je voudrais dire que la problématique de la dégradation des terres est une problématique majeure au niveau du Mali et le gouvernement a pris en compte cette problématique à travers différentes politiques qui notamment la stratégie de gestion durable des terres, la politique forestière et la loi sur le foncier agricole. Mais comme il a été rappelé ici, beaucoup d'initiatives ont été menées, les solutions existent et maintenant c'est comment aller à l'échelle par rapport à la mise en œuvre de toutes ces pratiques qui ont été présentées ici et qui marchent. Les grands défis ont été présentés et je voulais mentionner 3 défis majeurs par rapport à la problématique de la restauration des terres. Le premier grand défi, c'est la problématique du foncier. Il a été rappelé ici que le foncier est un aspect important pour les paysans qui s'engagent dans des initiatives de restauration et qui voudraient pouvoir bénéficier des retombées de ces efforts. Mais souvent, avec l'insécurité foncière qui existe autour du foncier dans nos pays, cela n'encourage pas beaucoup les paysans à s'engager dans ces initiatives qui demandent de l'effort, mais qui demandent également du temps pour pouvoir produire des effets. Et Mawa a parlé de la problématique de l'arbre champêtre, qui est une chose importante. On ne peut pas gérer l'arbre dans les champs au même titre que l'arbre qui est dans la forêt et qui n'a pas bénéficié d'efforts pour pouvoir les protéger, les régénérer, ainsi de suite. Donc ça, c'est une problématique majeure qu'il faille prendre en compte nos différentes initiatives, si on veut véritablement engager les communautés à les mobiliser pour aller à l'échelle dans la restauration et le reverdissement. La problématique de la synergie entre les acteurs et les différents secteurs est très importante. Souvent, nous avons de très bonnes politiques sectorielles, mais il n'y a pas cette coordination entre secteurs et entre acteurs, ce qui fait que souvent on se piétine les uns sur les pieds des autres. Et donc ça c'est un aspect important et je pense que ça a été rappelé par Mick et Mawa le même jour dans sa présentation. L'appropriation communautaire également est un défi majeur qu'il faut avoir pour assurer la durabilité de toutes les actions. Et c'est pourquoi nous, avant d'entrer dans une communauté, nous essayons et nous faisons un diagnostic participatif avec toutes les communautés où nous intervenons et pour définir ensemble une vision communautaire par rapport à la restauration des terres, au reboisement, au reverdissement. Et donc, cela permet de créer une appropriation au sein de la communauté. Et enfin, les approches de vulgarisation doivent être dirigées par les communautés elles-mêmes. Et nous, nos approches là-dessus portent sur des relais communautaires que nous formons et qui sont des ressources disponibles au sein de la communauté qui, elles, après, maintenant peuvent répliquer les formations auprès de leurs pairs producteurs pour aller à l'échelle. Donc, je voudrais dire, tout a été dit, comme je l'ai dit, les solutions existent, il faut maintenant aller à l'échelle. Il y a un certain nombre de leçons qu'il faut peut-être tirer à partir de ces défis et ces problématiques qui font encore que nous n'arrivons pas à aller à l'échelle. La problématique du foncier doit, comme je l'ai dit, il va falloir que les collectivités locales, les communautés au sein desquelles nous travaillons puissent être dotées de schémas d'aménagement et d'occupation des sols qui permettent de prévoir et de planifier les actions de reverdissement pour qu'il y ait un effort de reverdissement fait aujourd'hui. 2 ans après, il y a une autre politique gouvernementale qui vient et avec les questions d'urbanisation et tout cela est déboisé. Donc, le besoin de doter les collectivités de schémas d'aménagement est un besoin très important. Et au niveau du Mali, la loi foncière agricole a prévu les commissions foncières au niveau du village qui ont pour vocation de permettre la sécurisation des transactions foncières entre les individus. Et donc, permet de faciliter cette sécurisation du foncier. Donc, il va falloir renforcer ces commissions foncières dans leur rôle pour permettre encore de mieux sécuriser le foncier et aller à l'échelle par rapport aux pratiques de reverdissement. Je parlais tantôt de la synergie entre les acteurs. Cela est important et Mawa l'a bien souligné. Nous avons besoin d'une stratégie ou politique nationale d'agroforesterie holistique qui intègre les différents secteurs et qui permet de faire cette coordination intersectorielle. C'est vrai, dans les politiques, il y a des éléments, mais c'est cette coordination entre les différents secteurs qui pose un souci. Pour également réussir le reverdissement à grande échelle, nous avons besoin de combiner les techniques de reverdissement avec le développement des chaînes de valeur agro-forestières, parce que tant que le paysan n'arrive pas à sentir qu'il peut tirer un bénéfice immédiat de ces ressources, il ne va pas être motivé à s'engager aller à l'échelle par rapport à ces pratiques agroforestières. Et je terminé pour dire que l'approche de vulgarisation doit être pilotée par les communautés elles-mêmes pour assurer la durabilité. Et la problématique de l'accès au financement est important pour les communautés et les communautés pour pouvoir mener les actions sur le terrain. Et il faut qu'on sorte d'une situation de concurrence par rapport à la mobilisation des ressources vers une situation de collaboration et de coopération entre les différents acteurs pour être plus performants par rapport aux actions de reverdissement. C'est quelques idées que je voudrais partager avec vous et peut-être dans les débats généraux, on va pouvoir approfondir. Merci.
Merci, Pierre, pour cet aperçu.
Over to you.
Thank you, Pierre, for this overview of the experience of the Saharan Eco within the Regreening Africa project in Mali. You've shared an overview of the successes and challenges you're facing. I will ask if Ahmed or Roger are online. If not, we will open up a session for question and answers, about 15 to 20 minute session for people to ask questions. You could ask questions in the chat room and they will be answered by the presenters. Okay, thank you. So please write your questions in the chat room and we will address them to the key presenters.
Okay, Roger is online.
Oh, Rogers, okay. Also, before the Q&A session, Rogers, would you please give us your experience in Zimbabwe with the Zero organization, about your successes and failures on the ecosystem restoration processes? Roger, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I was not exactly going to give the experiences. I was going to comment on the presentations in terms of the way forward, including what we've experienced a bit. But very quickly, I can see that we've been having struggles in terms of combining the three major international conventions that were arrived at during the 8th summit: the UNCCD, the UNCBD, and the climate change convention. But it is quite clear that if we articulate and take these experiences as presented in these presentations for future thought processes, we will be able to combine these international instruments or conventions into some implementable programs. Because in more cases, we had a lot of divisions within countries, that there's a secretariat which deals with climate change, another secretariat in the country which deals with biodiversity, another secretariat which deals with desertification. So it was very good if you look at the UN ecosystems restoration programs and the presentations that were given. That is clearly, we can now try to target our restoration based on all these other international conventions and experiences that we have had. More so, if we really emphasize on our regional cooperation. Unfortunately, in the Southern African region, we have now limited interactions in terms of regional coordination on environmental and natural resource agricultural issues. So it would be my recommendation if organizations like CIFO or ICRAF, UNEP, FAO, we could really come out together and then try to see how this UN decade we can work together at regional level, share experiences. I liked the experiences given by Regreening Africa and how we can use those issues and the policies that are related to some of those issues. So basically, without saying much, I think it would be very good for us to, at one time, to have discussions on how we use the implementation model. I I was very impressed with the Ugandan presentation in terms of the model that they're using and implementation model. We know a lot on the literature. There's a lot that has come out. We need to read that. We look at the IPPS platform. There's a lot of literature that is there in terms of ecosystems restoration, but there's very little structure in terms of the implementation, institutional framework on how Africa can coordinate and cooperate in coming out with actionable, sustainable programs in this particular area. I think the UN decade gives us an opportunity to exactly do that. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Roger, for this brief overview of the perspective and how the UN is presenting this, or the approach by the UN. Is Hamed online to give his overview? If not, I would like to invite Olavi Lukanen to quickly give us an overview. Olavi is a renowned professor at the University of Helsinki, as he is connected online. Olavi, would you give us 5 minutes of your overview of this, your extensive experience in dealing with the restoration issues in sub-Saharan Africa?
Thank you, Ibrahim. This was quite a surprise. I was not prepared to participate in this active way, but let me say a few words. Yeah. I thank for the previous presentations, what was mentioned, especially what Mawa said about policy and the need for coordination. This is important. And of course, local participation is always needed. This has come over and over again in these today's presentations. One thing that I have not seen being mentioned here is a climate. Climate change has been mentioned, but how many of you are aware or have been thinking of the fact that climate is actually improving in the Sahelian zone? We get more rain, the Sahelian zone becomes greener all the time. And when we combine this natural trend towards greening with people's local communities' efforts, especially in Western Africa, so then we get the excellent results that we have seen over the whole Sahelian zone, but I think especially in Western Africa. So I'd like to ask for comments from the other panelists and whoever wants to comment on the climate trends. Too often we hear about the climate getting only worse in the Sahelian zone, but there is clear indication that for the last 20 years or so, we have been getting more and more rain, and we don't know how long this will continue. Other regions are getting drier. Northernmost Africa, Southern Africa, Australia, California, globally, those places are getting drier. But in the Sahel, we should take all the possible benefit from the increasing rainfall. Thank you. This was my comment for the moment.
Thank you very much for this intervention and this comments, Olavi, very much appreciated. With this, we open the Q&A session. We start with the question addressed to Miki. How can regreening project help Sahelian countries to contribute the post-2020 global biodiversity framework to reach the goal of 30 by 30? This is a question by Karafa. Miki?
Great, so I'll just mention a little bit about biodiversity and then maybe others want to add as well in the chat. So for Regreening Africa, we're primarily looking at a number of different elements. We're looking at a larger diversity of trees, but also of vegetation. And I think by looking at practices such as farmer managed natural regeneration, by looking at the role, so there's different things that we can do to increase the understanding of the importance of some of our indigenous species and the diversity of its species. For example, in Ghana, one of the team is recently constructing a book that shows all of the different trees, their names in local languages, what they're used for, and really understanding the value of many of these different species. And by bringing that information to the forefront, we can increase the diversity of the trees and the other species. There's also a huge other element to diversity, looking at the soil, looking at the grasslands, and looking at these different areas. So I think for Regreening Africa, our main contribution will be around looking at how we can bring indigenous species more strongly into the restoration efforts, understanding the value of these species, and then also promoting this to be a larger part of our discussion around restoration. So it's really around the lessons and the knowledge products.
Thank you. Follow-up question on that. What are the challenges of using eucalyptus species in land restoration? I think this was shown on one of the pictures in Niger.
Yeah. There is, and I do notice that quite a lot of our photos do have exotics as well. So the eucalyptus question is interesting for me, and I could also see John online. As an Australian from birth, I don't have as much hatred for eucalyptus as some people do, and I think it's often about the type of species. But eucalyptus will not provide the benefits in all circumstances that we need. So there is a reason why people like eucalyptus. They grow fast, they can get timber, they can get firewood. I've been told anecdotal evidence of giving out many seedlings in Ethiopia, and everybody throws everything else on the ground before they get home, and the only thing they plant is the eucalyptus. So we do also have to recognize there's a reason why eucalyptus are preferred by a lot of people. And I do think that in some cases, there are indigenous species that can offer some of those same benefits, maybe not quite as fast. And we need to bring some of that information more to the forefront. But it's also about matching again. So a lot of the eucalyptus are just single species planted in inappropriate areas. And I think that there is a bigger debate to be had on eucalyptus. I don't think we should be looking at plantations of eucalyptus to stop degradation. I don't think that's the answer, but I do think they probably have a role, and the degree to which it has a role in each place would need to be discussed at the local level. I'm actually just going to tap John, because I can see you on the screen, to see if you've got anything to add as a fellow Australian.
Thank you, Mika, very kind. Yes, look, I share and agree with everything that you just mentioned. I always used to watch the large areas of eucalyptus immediately around Addis Ababa. And that was fuel wood, it was timber, it was high value, because ultimately, as Moa and Mika and we all know, have said, and we all know, ultimately, the preferences and priorities of the communities and the households must match with the restoration practices that we have on offer, because that is the way to organic, widespread farmer-to-farmer, community-to-community scaling. There must be positive value and benefits perceived by the managers of the land. I hope that's helpful. Thank you very much. And it's a wonderful, very, very good presentations all round. I'm impressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this intervention, John. I would like to pass on the floor to Antoine. Antoine, for the rest of the Q&A session, would you be available, Antoine?
Okay, thank you very much, Ibrahim.
Antoine, you have an echo, maybe. Okay, while Antoine gets ready, we have another question. I think I said there's a debate going on about the regreening of the Sahel, whether climate change has improved conditions in the Sahel or not. This has been an ongoing debate for many, many years, and I think the views are very much, how do you say, many on the issue. But what's been understood from this regreening or this improving climate condition in the Sahel is that this has been pretty much localized in specific areas. It's not proven that throughout the Sahel conditions have improved in all the areas or throughout many countries, but it's very much localized in specific places. And so there are still studies going on to understand what are the key reasons of some of these regreening that we see. Is it due to the climate only? Is it due to improvement in agricultural practices? Is it due to land restoration efforts? So the debate is really ongoing for that. Antoine, you ready? And then Miki, there's a question from Chidozi Ernest. What parameters do you use to evaluate land degradation neutrality? And also, why is your project not extended to Nigeria?
I think there is some work starting to take place in Nigeria, and I think hopefully some people online could talk about that. But this project obviously had a finite number of countries to start off with. But we are looking very strongly to make sure that the lessons and the experience from regreening are fed into the Great Green Wall, and so Nigeria will have its time, I'm sure. In terms of the different elements that we measure, we primarily look at soil organic carbon and soil erosion. Within LDN, they also look at overall productivity, where we are measuring farm livelihood. So we're looking at the kind of the benefits that come in terms of livelihoods and in terms of cash income projected into the future for the trees that are grown and the restoration processes that take place. So it's not completely at total farm productivity, but we're looking particularly around livelihoods. We will be measuring all of this as part of our evaluation, impact evaluation, which is taking place this year and next year. Some of those indicators will have shifted, we hope. Some of them will take a little bit longer to shift in some of the areas. So there are times where soil organic carbon can move faster than we would expect, particularly in areas where it's quite low. But in some of the other areas where there's high soil organic carbon, it may take a little bit longer. And that's why having these polygons is really helpful, because we should be able to keep looking at it into the future. And just while I'm talking about how we're monitoring, I did see a question in the chat earlier around linking the tenure to the restoration process. And I think that's a fantastic idea. It will be a little bit challenging because we often have tenure arrangements in each country and there's a lot of variables between them. But I do think the idea of looking more closely at where there's greater user rights, do we have more restoration taking place and who benefits from that would be extremely informative. So I also wanted to comment on that.
Okay. Thank you. There's a question in French by Yassi Diaby. Quelles sont les conditions favorables à mener une action de restauration dans un lieu donné et quelles sont les cibles à prioriser? Je dirais peut-être pour répondre en premier à cette question-là, déjà en termes de conditions favorables, il faut peut-être prioriser les besoins des communautés. Il faut collaborer avec les communautés pour identifier les besoins en termes de restauration, identifier le degré de dégradation de la zone concernée. La technique LDSF dont le lien a été partagé, qui est utilisée par ICRAF et CIFOR, permet de connaître l'état de lieu, c'est-à-dire ça fait l'état des lieux en termes de végétation, en termes de dégradation du sol et beaucoup d'autres aspects biophysiques. Et maintenant, il faut impliquer la communauté dans toutes les pratiques de restauration qui seront adoptées. Parce que la restauration, on l'a vu, c'est un processus qui doit être contextuel pour que ça ait réellement un résultat. Donc, dépendant du milieu, dépendant du contexte spécifique, les pratiques peuvent être différentes. Il n'y a pas une solution transversale qui peut être appliquée à toutes les communautés, mais à chaque communauté et à chaque niveau de dégradation ou besoin en termes de restauration, on implique les communautés dans le processus pour être sûr que les pratiques qui seront adoptées seront des pratiques pérennes. Merci. And then who is the point person to contact? I've shared the LDSF link in the chat, so you will have all the details about the person to contact and more documents about the LDSF.
Ibrahim?
Yes, Mawa?
Sorry, can I add few words to the question in French, to which you just gave some element of response? Yeah. Je voudrais juste ajouter quelques idées sur les conditions qui peuvent aider, les conditions à prendre en compte quand on veut commencer ou quand on veut procéder à des activités de restauration. Je trouve qu'un élément très important est de faire l'état des lieux de la question foncière, la question des droits sur la terre et la question aussi des droits sur les arbres. Car si quelqu'un commence un projet de restauration et puis et qu'il y a des acteurs, par exemple, qui sont des migrants, qui n'ont pas le droit de planter un arbre sur la terre ou bien qui n'ont pas vraiment le droit à des arbres qui sont déjà sur la terre. Si le projet se focalise sur ce genre d'acteurs, ça peut être très difficile et ça peut créer des conflits même au sein de la communauté. Donc, il est important de connaître les droits, la distribution des droits, la distribution des opportunités pour pouvoir prendre des mesures qui pourraient aider chaque acteur à pouvoir participer au projet et aussi à pouvoir bénéficier des efforts qui seront investis dans la restauration des écosystèmes. Un autre aspect est de pouvoir jumeler la restauration avec le développement des chaînes de valeur, comme on l'a dit. Car il ne faut pas restaurer pour restaurer, c'est bon pour l'environnement, mais pour garder le momentum, pour garder un peu l'engagement des communautés, il faut que les gens voient et perçoivent les bénéfices des activités de restauration. Sinon, on peut se décourager très, très rapidement. Ce sont ces deux aspects que je voulais ajouter. Merci.
Merci Mawa pour cet ajout. Pierre, tu voulais ajouter quelque chose?
Oui, en fait, ce que je voudrais ajouter, c'est également ne pas penser qu'une seule technique va permettre de restaurer une terre dégradée. Donc, il faut une combinaison de plusieurs techniques. Par exemple, un projet de reboisement pourrait associer tout ce qui est des techniques d'amélioration de la fertilité des sols. Et donc, c'est en ce moment qu'on va avoir vraiment un bénéfice important des actions de restauration. Donc, il faut ces aspects, en plus, la combinaison des différentes techniques et ne pas se limiter à dire j'ai fait la régénération naturelle assistée sur X hectares et je n'ai pas eu à associer, par exemple, des cordons pierreux et d'autres techniques qui puissent vraiment permettre de mieux gérer le potentiel d'amélioration de la productivité. C'est ce que je voudrais ajouter en plus de ce que Mawa a dit par rapport aux fonciers et les chaînes de valeur. Merci. Et je voudrais également répondre à la question par rapport au changement climatique. Je pense peut-être, oui, on a plus de pluie, mais la question majeure ici, c'est la variabilité et la distribution de cette pluie dans le temps qui constitue aujourd'hui un grand défi pour les producteurs au Sahel. Et donc, les changements climatiques peuvent être bénéfiques en termes d'augmentation de la quantité de pluie, mais est-ce qu'en termes de distribution, cela est bien distribué dans le temps pour permettre aux producteurs de pouvoir produire suffisamment? Et le cas s'est produit cette année au Mali, on a eu une pluviométrie très variable et mal distribuée dans le temps. Et donc, on va se retrouver avec une quantité de pluviométrie assez abondante, mais au finish, ça affecte la saison agricole. Donc, merci, c'est ce que je voulais ajouter.
Merci Pierre pour cette clarification et merci à Mao aussi pour la contribution.
Over to you.
Yes, you hear me? Thank you, Pierre, for your contribution. And then there are a few questions that were raised concerning greening Africa in activities in Burkina Faso, and why we are not in Burkina Faso and Ghana and so on. So maybe those will be addressed by Mieke later on. And all right, if you have any more questions, please raise them in the chat box. And
should I ask the question about l'initiative de restauration des terres avec les conflits, l'impact des conflits? Est-ce que Pierre peut répondre à ça?
L'initiative de?
Non, l'impact des conflits et les initiatives de restauration au Sahel.
Ok, Pierre Dambélé, l'impact des conflits sur l'initiative de restauration des terres au Sahel, quel impact cela a sur ces initiatives-là? And then for the French translation, it seems that there's been few complaints that the voice is low or.
Oui, les conflits ont forcément un impact sur la restauration des terres, puisque les producteurs n'arrivent plus à accéder comme ils le veulent à leur champ et leur espace de production. Donc, cela va sans dire que avec la divagation des animaux, la coupe illégale des arbres protégés par la régénération naturelle assistée, nous allons assister à une dégradation encore en plus de ces espaces qui avaient fait bénéficier de restauration. Donc ça peut être l'un des impacts du conflit. Et également du fait que les services des eaux de forêt qui sont chargés de la protection des ressources n'arrivent plus à accéder à certaines parties, peut également amplifier les actions de dégradation au niveau de ces zones. Et même les services de vulgarisation agricole qui ne peuvent que être à proximité des populations, tout cela a des impacts sur les actions de restauration. Et également, dans une zone de conflit, c'est sûr, il n'y a aucun partenaire qui souhaiterait mettre son argent lorsqu'il n'est pas en mesure d'aller suivre ces actions. Donc, en termes de financement, ça réduit également les possibilités de mobilisation des ressources pour amplifier les actions de reverdissement. Donc, les conflits ont forcément un impact sur les activités de restauration et de reverdissement. Merci.
Merci Pierre. Ce que j'aurais peut-être voulu ajouter à ça, c'est les aspects de migration aussi qui parviennent ou bien qui sont généralement causés par les conflits font que les populations sont beaucoup mobiles et les populations vont peut-être dans des endroits où ça change la dynamique de la restauration. Donc, il y a une plus forte pression sur les ressources naturelles et qui peut mettre, qui peut géopardiser tout ce qui a été fait comme activité de restauration. Donc, les conflits de ce côté de migration, de mouvement des populations augmentent la densité dans certaines localités qui a une influence directe sur tout ce qui est exploitation des ressources naturelles ou activité de restauration qui avait été préalablement engagée. Je ne sais pas si quelqu'un d'autre voulait ajouter quelque chose à ça. Mawa, Mieke, would you want to add anything to how conflicts will affect restoration processes?
Peut-être quelques mots. En termes de conflit, je voudrais mentionner un peu les aspects liés au pastoralisme. Puisque nous avons des mouvements importants d'acteurs et puis avec leur bétail d'une zone à une autre, d'un pays à un autre. cela amène un peu, cela peut créer des frustrations et ça peut créer aussi des conflits le long du chemin s'il n'y a pas de plan clairement établi des parcours de bétail et aussi de la gestion même du bétail et puis du pastoralisme dans les zones d'accueil. Donc, ceci montre un peu le grand besoin qu'on ait une vue et une appréciation intégrée et holistique de la question des restaurations et aussi de la question même de la gestion des espaces restaurés au sein des pays, mais aussi entre les pays et entre les communautés. Merci.
Merci bien Mawa pour cette contribution. À cela, Mawa, je vais suivre avec une question qui était un peu adressée. What are the best right-based conservation approaches for policy changes in ecosystem restoration?
Yeah, the best approaches, what I can say is first to be sure that there is inclusivity, that the rights and the opportunities of all the actors are taken into account, first are known, and then are taken into account. And what is critical in trying to make sure that the rights and opportunities of everybody is taken into account and enforced is the sorry, I'm looking for my ideas now. Yeah, is to make sure that we have clear policies. When we have clear policies, we need to make sure also of how we implement those policies. We know that in many places of the world, and specifically in sub-Saharan African context, we have very beautiful and nice laws and nice regulations. But when it comes to the practices, we see often a parallel between what is called traditional or customary systems and what is called formal or legal state provisions. So most of the time, these two aspects or these two regulations can get can be conflicting, and with a result in practice that trying to follow sometimes a strict right-based approach could be really challenging. So I think the key here is to know the formal provisions, but to also try to see in which, to which extent those formal provisions can be implemented for all the actors to get the rights and to get and to be able to benefit from the restoration activities. Because we can try to follow a strict right-based approach and then end up harming or end up having opposite results than what was intended. That's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mawa, for these clarifications. I don't know if anybody else wanted to comment on that. Another question I had, yes?
Oh, Ibrahim?
Yes, Antoine?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, they've been a participant, I think his name is Imrach. And I wonder if he's still on board. He did very good comments on global degradation. And if he's on board, can he raise his question and make comments he wanted to bring on board? Imrach, is he still there?
No, I don't see that participant.
Okay, yeah, he raised very good question in the chat and I wanted him to comment on that. But they've been very good questions about partnerships, and many people talked about including the youth, women, and the others. And maybe I'll be asking Mawa or whoever else, or Marie Chantal, to comment on that. But it is ELC, the International Land Coalition. Most of our approaches do have to include the indigenous communities, the indigenous people and the local communities, and including women and youth as well. So I think it would be a very good approach from the grassroots for this restoration of degraded ecosystem to have these diverse communities being included from the very planning of the programs. Is anyone who would like to comment on this? Mawa or Mieke or Marie Chantal, comment on this?
Antoine, sorry, can you come again on this question?
It is about partnership. Can you hear me? It is about partnership. I'm saying that we should, there have been so many comments from the chat where they would like to have youth, women, and local communities on board. And I said, ELC is international organization, and ICRAF, C4 ICRAF, it is one of our approach, including youth, local communities, indigenous people, into programs of restoration of ecosystems. And I wanted, if anyone can elaborate further on this for all participants. Yeah.
Antoine, may I?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Odas Ugiman, the International Land Coalition Africa Connector. And yes, indeed, the work of ILC is all about partnerships, and that happens at country level through what we call national land coalitions, or at regional level through what we call regional platforms. And those regional platforms, they deal with different thematics, including one on ecosystems restoration that actually is hosting us together with the Greening Africa initiative. So these are partnerships. These are multi-stakeholder initiatives, and women, youth, local communities. These are important actors that we want to have in the forefront of these partnerships. So what I would say is that we encourage actors in this room who would be interested in joining these different platforms in different countries or at regional level, to get in touch with us, with Antoine, who is facilitating the regional platform, to join these partnerships. It's interesting, especially when we talk about women and youth. For example, we invest a lot in women land rights, but yesterday being an International Women's Day, one issue that has been raised is that women end up only being provided with poor quality lands. Even where they manage to get access to land, they are only most of the time provided with the less quality land, and the less, I mean, when you talk about degraded lands, degraded soil, that's about really quality of land, quality of land. So a degraded land is useless for women, is useless for everybody. That's why tenure security and tenure security is not enough. That security has to be on a quality land, on a quality soil. And the most affected by poor quality soil are women. It's very important that they are really brought on board, that are involved in these partnerships, and seek to ensure that there is quality land, that there is quality land, that there is quality soil. that in these partnerships where we really work to restore those degraded lands. So it's very important, and we work in partnerships, and we push for those special groups to be in the reading, especially in the context of the new IC strategy that we just launched for the next 9 years. Women, youth, local communities have to be in the driving seat. So we really encourage at country level, at regional level, that these groups are really are brought on board, and that they are taking the lead.
Okay. Any other comment? Another comment which came in is thanks to us for these partnership issues. A question was brought by one of the participants about presence in Asia, in other countries. Yes, we have a commitment-based initiative in Asia on locally managed ecosystems. And if you can share your address, we can link you with the person in charge. So we are in Asia as well. C4ECRAF is having activities on restoration of ecosystems, and we can link with you with people on this. My next question is, they've been raised questions about fundraising, and one of the participants talked about the private sector. Private sector is important in the land degradation, restoration, and really, if we can have them more interested in and bringing in funds, especially to invest at the community level, would be an interesting thing. Is there anyone who would comment on these private sector investments?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jonathan. Actually, I'm working with a livelihoods venture that is a social business and impactment fund. And indeed, we are supporting NGO and local governments to implement agroforestry and reforestation projects. And we are eager to invest in projects that would have not only an environmental impact, but for the sustainability of the project, that have a social and economical impacts. And I've been very interested in all the presentation this morning. It was very interesting. One of the main difficulties that we have as investors is really the link with the communities, and to identify the local relays, that is the one promoting and supporting the farmer in developing the projects. And this is actually one of the big challenges that we are facing. But we are very eager in developing more partnership. And if anybody is interested to know more about livelihoods, I will be eager to talk.
Thank you very much for your comment. Any follow-up question on this or comments on the? It is really important because the private sector is quite important, especially when you come to restoration, and especially when you come to carbon climate change, and it is quite issue. So we'll be contacting you later to see how you can raise funds and how you can make a proposal together. Thank you for that. Is there any donor who is around who can intervene and who can tell us about how he oversees this question of fundraising and raising funds for land restoration, especially linking it with the local communities?
Antoine, I think there is two people that have raised their hands.
I can't see it. So they can.
Oh, there is Dahi Youssef. It's Gilbert. There is Dahi Youssef and Abdul Momin Yusuf.
Can you handle this, because I can't see the reaction of people.
Okay.
Please go ahead. Yeah. And handle.
Dahi Yusuf, I think you can. You have the floor if you want to talk. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much for taking my question. I'm from Somalia, and I hear people mention Somaliland and Puntland, you know, your presence is there. But one thing I wanted to know is that the whole country, Somalia, every inch of it, is today covered by an invasive species, tree that was brought from Mexico. It's called Prosopis jolliflora or algarobe. That tree has taken even the waterways, the roads, everywhere. I don't know if somebody can say something about, you know, if they are aware of that invasive species in Somalia, and if anything's being done in collaboration with the government of Somalia. And if this also problem is affecting any other East African country or any other Sahel country. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. Is there invasive species are quite a problem, not only in Somalia, but in other countries as well. And especially when restoration is with exotic species. So some exotic species, not all of them, some exotic species are invasive, and these should be avoided. And I think there is a site, I think on Kabi or UECN, where you can see some of the invasive species. I don't know about the species you mentioned about Somalia, if anyone in East Africa can help, but we don't have those into the Sahel, to my knowledge, unless my colleagues can answer. Are you aware of this with
yes,
Somalia
Prosopis
program?
Juliflora.
Yes.
Well, I'm aware of Prosopis. I think it's an invasive species that's also causing a lot of concern in Kenya, particularly in some of the drier counties around Baringo through Turkana, Tana. So we have the same challenge, and there has been some work that's been undertaken. I wouldn't say there's one solution. There's been some efforts to look at management or control. There's been some work around trying to use the products, so creating energy. There's also been efforts to see if it can be used for charcoal instead of indigenous species, and then what would the transition look like? So there is work underway on Prosopis, but it is a huge challenge. It spreads very quickly, and does have a lot of negative impacts. I'd be happy to share some links to the work that I've seen on this, and there may be others on the call that have other ideas, but it is a huge challenge, and it's also across Kenya and other East African countries.
This is Olavi. Can I come in?
Yes, Olavi.
Well, I'm not sitting in East Africa, but in middle of Finnish winter with snow and so on. But lots of work has been done on Prosopis. Our group at the University of Helsinki has been doing that in Kenya, Sudan, especially India, and so on. So we already have lots of recommendations, and just to sum it up, so we should not try to eradicate it. It's too expensive, and the result will not be good. But we can control Prosopis by using it, not to plant it, but wherever it is, we use it for energy, for charcoal, for fodder, and so on. And that's the best way to control it. There are already guidelines how to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Olaji.
Sorry, and if I could follow up on that.
Okay.
On using this species, and from what I understand, no, this is not useful as a fodder. No animal eats it, and also in a dry land such as Somalia, these species are causing a big trouble because, from my understanding, root goes up to 75 feet deep. What that meant is that all the trees, all the grass, everything will disappear wherever it grows. So leaving it will never be a solution. And like if you now today look at the landscape in Somalia, it is just decimated. No other tree is around anywhere because, my thinking is that this water is being used by this invasive species and starving all other biodiversity in the landscape. Thank you.
May I respond?
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, we already have experience. So I'm working in Somalia and in close cooperation with the Prime Minister's office and the environmental unit there. So experience from many countries, from Sudan, Kenya, and soon from Somalia will show that we can control it by using it and using it for energy. Charcoal, it's one of the best species for charcoal making. But it's hopeless to try to eradicate it with poisons and digging it up. That will never succeed. You can make fodder it. The pods are very much liked by animals, and you can grind the pods so that the animals don't spread the seeds. So there are different techniques.
Sorry to interrupt, but I hear that the animals that are fed that powder lost their teeth, all their teeth, which is like, it won't solve the problem. Anyway, thank you very much for
Thank you, Yusuf. There is James Ndufa. Ndufa, you said that you developed a strategy with Kefri. Can you give some tips to Yusuf, please?
Thank you, Kalingarina, for seeing me. Yes, we are doing some work with the prosopis. We have now developed a national strategy and action plan for the management and control of prosopis. Basically, the communities in Kenya, they don't want the species, and under the conventional biological diversity, it's an invasive weeds. So in long run, we need to eradicate, but we also need to know that it has really affected the livelihoods of the communities. As Yusuf has said, it's taking over the pasture land. So in the strategy, we are looking at three options: physical removal and utilization. We are looking at the biological control as the next alternative, introducing a pest which can be able to feed on the pods and therefore reduce on the seed density. And to a smaller extent, we are looking at the chemical control. And we have looked at all those alternatives, and we are now recommending to the government, based on the work that we have done both in Baringo, Turkana, and other counties, on how best to eradicate this particular species. But remove and give alternative options. Do the reseeding of the grass and also introduce other species which can be able to grow. In terms of reducing the seed population in the soil, we are also recommending that after it germinates, we do the physical or removal as a way of controlling it. Again, it's widely spread by the livestock. We have to see how best to handle that particular aspect. Thank you, Anthony Kalangalile.
Asante James, asante sana.
Asante sana.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, Yusuf, you have some tips. You can contact those people who are intervening. And I know at TCRAF, we have a technical note about working with prosopis, and that can be shared. Just contact us.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, any question? Anybody? The last two questions. I think we are running out of time. Last questions.
We have few hands raised for a while.
Yes, I can't see them. Ibrahim,
yeah,
can you help?
I'm bringing it up. Abdul Mumin Yusuf and I thought Fisos also had her hand raised. So Abdul Yusuf.
Okay, so can I go ahead?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, can I go ahead? Yeah, thank you so much. I want to first of all thank the organizers for this wonderful meeting. It's very insightful and very educative, and to all the panelists for their wonderful presentations. Yeah, I'll be happy if we can have a decentralized system in place whereby other African countries or other Global South members can replicate the same as we are holding now to the national level. I think that we will go a long way impacting and also realizing this project. So that's my suggestion to the organizers. I'm Abdul Mumin Yusuf from Ghana. I work with the United Force for Development, a youth-based organization focused on environment and climate change, and also a member of the World Economic Forum Global Shapers in charge of environment and sustainable development. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We had Sola also. I don't know if she's still around to take the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. Professor Sola, I work with C4ECRAF, and for the past 5 years, I've been working with prosopis. We just did a review. Prosopis occurs in 123 countries in the world, and it's only invasive in less than 13 countries. Yes. So you have it in Southern Africa, but it's not invasive in most of those Southern African countries. I think that really the problem is that prosopis was introduced, but there was no management strategy put in. When it was introduced, it was for the right objective to really curb desertification in most of those areas that had no trees. And I think the James said everything that I wanted to say. That's why I lowered my hand to say, really, you need a combination of all those strategies, chemical, biological, and utilization. In Baringo, we actually starting a project where we are producing fodder where you grind the pods together with grass so that there is no high concentration of the pods in the fodder. So as you remove the prosopis seeding grass, then you actually come up with a fodder to feed the animals, so that you give the farmers an option when most of their land has been taken over by prosopis. But there's also really thinning out prosopis, introducing other species, and trying to play around with the chemical composition of the soil that has been changed by prosopis. So there is a future that we can see if we manage prosopis in a multidimensional manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor, for this intervention. Antoine, you wanna, we reaching pretty much the end of this workshop, the time that was initially allocated. If you wanna wrap it up and
Oh, Ibrahim, it is not easy to wrap up this. It was a wonderful workshop, and thanks for everyone. I think the interventions, presentations have really been beneficial and important. And I think we need to work together so that we can work for more resilient and sustainable ecosystems. We should be translated into improved livelihoods for mostly local communities in the restoration of ecosystems. Definitely, there have been questions about policies and approaches. Questions in the charts, quite interesting, raised about sustainable territorial and economy ecosystem. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, sustainable territorial and ecosystem management. So we need really to have conducive policies and approaches. People talked about it. People talked about bylaws. People talked about different issues. But what is important, Mieke talked about correct data, information. We need to have this documented into, and the best practice being documented and shared with all communities and adopted in different ecosystems. Definitely, we need all these. Been very good intervention in the chat about holistic strategies and approaches, and it needs to be integrated into national plans. And it is quite important we do work on this direction. And lastly, what I have to comment on this, we need to have strong partnership between different countries, different NGOs, different communities, and establish a community of practices based on ecosystem restoration and conservation actions. And for this, we need to really have a good initiative, a good advocacy plan, engaging governments, donors, and the other stakeholders, but most importantly, including all stakeholders, the youth, the women, indigenous people, and work for their land rights. The big problem is, it has been mentioned, is we are restoring lands, but for who? People are grabbing land. So we really need to work towards land rights for these communities we are trying to develop. Thank you very much. And I think
thank you, Antoine.
We'll share this later on. And maybe for conclusion, please contact us, please contact C4E Craft, please contact the different presenters for further information. But we need to work together so that we can restore most of the degraded lands. We have so many lands, hectares, which are being lost every day. Maybe we can, Ibrahim, you can pass the last word to the regional coordinator of ARC. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
We give the last closing remarks to Odas Kubiwana, regional coordinator of ILC. Odas, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Brahim and Antoine. Mine is short. I think we've gone beyond time. I won't keep you further longer here, but I really want to commend this initiative, this gathering. It's, I think, the first time that it's not easy, I would say, to gather more than 200 participants online for a thematic, but since the beginning, I have seen more than 200 here online, really keenly following. I want to commend the organizers, the East Africa Ecosystem Restoration Regional Platform and Greening Africa Initiative. This is a great space for sharing. There was a lot of experience shared here. The kind of question that Yusuf was asking, these are questions really that has solutions, but the opportunities to share those solutions sometimes are not provided, and that's mainly the objective of IELTS working through multi-stakeholder platforms. We need to provide a space for learning from each other, for experience sharing, but also for mobilizing the needed resources to bring about the change that are needed. When it comes to this particular matter, restoring degraded lands and soils, For us at ILC and members who are mostly or here in the room, land restoration, ecosystem restoration is key, as I said before, because land quality is a very important factor, and land quality, ecosystem restoration, and land tenure, these are intertuned matters. You won't have sustainable land quality if you don't sort out the issue of tenure security, because there is no one who is going to invest in land conservation on for a land that doesn't belong to him or to her, or at least for a land for which the ownership is not clear. So these two, ecosystem restoration, land restoration, and land tenure are intertwined, and that's why we are saying that land rights are a pathway to sustainable and successful land restoration, ecosystem restoration. And I'm happy that this is really coming out from this discussion. I've been reading in the chat how all actors here understand the importance of making sure that land tenure is clarified before we even invest in land restoration, if we want this to be sustainable. And I think we need to really keep these things together as we move forward. How do we ensure that we invest sustainably in land, in ecosystem restoration? We need to make sure that we do it by addressing inclusion and tenure security. So I think that that has come out, and I really want to emphasize that. What also is interesting about this conference is the partnership. This work of ecosystem restoration will not be carried out by a single actor. There is a need for strong partnership around it. There is a need for everyone on board. There is a need for researchers on board. There is a need for the civil society on board. There is a need for the private sector that has been mentioned. You know, they are investing on these lands. We need to make sure that the investments are sustainability sensitive. If we have really to achieve that sustainable restoration. So we need resource partners on board. It requires a lot of resources. So these partnerships, and I think this conference demonstrates that it is possible to work together for restoration. We are all, I'm sure all of us are part of this UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. This is a great space that we need to make best use of. And inform it from our different angles. And one last point before I close my remarks is what was already mentioned, the role of local communities. Local communities, those are really the ones suffering the most from degradation of lands. What is their role in the whole process? We are saying there should be in the lead, at the center of these discourses. They should inform the solutions. They are solutions. We sometimes call them homegrown solutions. They are indigenous people. They have solutions on how to go about ecosystem restoration. How do we involve them? At what point do we bring them on board? And I would say they should be brought on board from the beginning. So that's very key for the sustainability of the ecosystem restoration. I commend all of us for this, and I encourage all of us to really keep this space on and regular. I hope the platform that ICRAF is facilitating and Regreening Africa Initiative you will keep bringing us together for these excellent exchange on this important topic. This is one of the most important of our days, and let's invest in it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Odas, for this closing word. And on this, we thank the Regreening Africa team. We thank the ILC Africa team and all the 214 participants that have made this workshop a great one. Thank you all and have a great day, have a great night, and see you for the next session. Thank you and bye-bye.